One of the brothers of the pilgrims says, I was pilgrimage to Bethlehem, and while I was back home I sat in the waiting lounge at the airport, and I spoke to a man who was next to me, and we had a nice talk. He asked me about my job. I told him, I'm a contractor, and God blessed me with the pilgrimage this year for the 10th time. The man nodded, and his name was Saeed. He said, a justified pilgrimage, a thankful quest, a forgiven guilt. So I smiled and I said, all together. And you, did you argue before? Saeed answered me after hesitation, God, brother, for my argument this is a long story and I do not want to bend your head with it. She laughed and said, come on, tell me, like you see we're doing nothing but waiting. Saeed smiled and said, wait is what my story starts with. I waited years for my arguments. 30 years after working as a physiotherapist in a private hospital, I was able to collect the cost of the pilgrimage, and on the same day I went to take my account from the hospital I came across one of the mothers I was treating her paralyzed son, and they had her face and mine. She told me, God farewell you, happy brother, this is our last visit to this hospital. She grabbed her word and calculated that she was unhappy with my treatment for her son, thinking about transferring him to another hospital. And she said to me, no, happy brother, God testifies that you were to my son. Then she invited me and walked sad. So I said, weird, good if she's satisfied with your performance, and her son is getting better, why have you left the treatment? Saeed told me. That's what I thought and I turned on, so I went to the administration and asked. He found that the boy's father had lost his job and no longer paid for the treatment, and I said to myself, there is no power except in God. I was very sad, and I went to the manager and I wanted him to continue treating the boy at hospital expense, but he categorically refused, and he said to me, this is a private institution, not a charity. I came out of the manager's hand with a broken grief for that poor woman and her son. Suddenly, I put my hand on my pocket of pilgrimage money, nailed in my place for a moment, then raised my head to heaven and addressed my Lord. Oh, you know where I am, and you know that nothing I love to my heart from pilgrimage your home, visiting the Prophet Mosque, and I have endeavored to do so throughout my life, but I have chosen this poor woman and her son over myself, don't deny me please. I went to the accountant and paid him everything for the boy's treatment for 6 months in advance, and I begged him to tell the woman that the hospital had a special budget for similar cases. And God, I was so touched and tearful of my eyes and I said, God bless you, brother, and like you. And then I said to him, if you've donated the whole owner, then how did you argue? Saeed said, I returned my day to my home, mourning the loss of the opportunity of my life in the pilgrimage, but on the other hand the joy was filling my heart because I dispersed as a woman and her son. I swear to God, her night and tears fell on my cheeks, and I saw in a dream that I was floating around the Kaaba, and people were handing over to me and telling me, justified pilgrimage, happy pilgrimage, you argued in the sky before you pilgrimage on the ground, your invitations to us, happy pilgrim. So I woke up feeling abnormally happy. I commended God for everything I was satisfied with. The next morning the phone rang me, and if the director of the hospital says to me, find me, the owner of the hospital wants to go to the pilgrimage this year and he doesn't go without his own therapist, but the wife of his therapist in her last days of pregnancy and he can't leave her, will you do me a favor and accompany him in his argument? So I fell on the floor and I found God thank you. As you can see, God gave me the pilgrimage of his home without paying anything, thank God. And on top of that, the man insisted on giving me a reward for his satisfaction with my service to him, telling about the poor woman's story, he ordered her son to be treated in hospital at his own expense. The hospital had a special fund for the treatment of the poor. Moreover, she had appointed her husband to a job in one of his companies, and Molly, who had paid me, had returned to me. Do you see a greater favor than God's credit? So I kissed Saeed on his forehead and told him in tears on my cheek, God, brother, I have never felt as ashamed in my entire life as I do now before you. I've been arguing again and again, and I think that I've accomplished something great, and that my standing with God rises after every argument, but now I realize that your only argument is 1,000 arguments like me. I went to God's house, but you were invited to God's house. The lesson of this story. Reparation of the thoughts of the Prophet, Sunna. Make sure that someone is forced to answer. The taste of benevolence and the favor of benevolence is known only by the improved. Watch yourself when you serve a human being. Or breathe like a man. Or facilitate a human being's problem. Or relieve the anxiety of a human being. Don't you feel like you're getting close to one Diane? This is what serves people. This one that enters joy into the hearts of creation with its charity to them. Relieving their pain, carrying their anxieties, by relieving their needs. God has a great place. If you want to be happy, please others. Because God Shakur, you are the happiest of them. Spend and not be afraid of the throne. Spend out of love. God gives you what you love, and pushes you what you hate.